Hi, everybody, and welcome to Best Practices for High School Grading. Today we put together a presentation with I'm Chaz Garcia. I'm the second vice president of OEA, and I worked with Vanessa Cifuentes, who's the executive director of high school, to create something to provide support for all of you high school teachers out there grappling with how to grade. And I'm joined today by some wonderful educators who are going to be available to provide some insight. We have Patty Segura from Fremont High School and Joey Notaro from Fremont as well. Susan Keene, who's from Oakland International High School, and Kampala Thais Rancifer, who's our OEA Community Schools leader and also a teacher in Oakland. So we are hoping that you get a lot out of today's webinar. Our outcomes for today are to provide some additional clarity around grading guidance in high school and to discuss best practices and within the distance learning context, and to support teachers to address individual grading questions. So we wanted to start kind of just talking about what the MOU says. So if we look at the MOU portion of grading as it's specific to high school, some of the key components to consider are that unit members, which would be all of you teachers, are expected to shift from a grading structure, which traditionally you may give A, B, C grades, to a credit, no credit approach. And that's for all teachers grades 6 through 12. Students that do not have access to technology should have received alternatives to the technology from the teacher and the district designated learning plans. And perhaps the most important thing to hold is that no student, will receive a grade of no credit due to lack of access to technology or language supports, as well as other COVID-19 related mitigating factors, which are many, such as homelessness, foster youth status, loss of employment to student or household family member illness, and anything else that could have popped up as related to COVID-19. So let's talk a little bit more about what the MOU says about assigning no credit. Prior to a teacher assigning a student with a grade of no credit, there are interventions that should be implemented. Within the creation of the MOU, the intention was really to support our students through this period without creating any harm and any further burden upon them. So in an effort to hold students harmless, we crafted these interventions to have them put in place prior to being able to admit a no credit for any one student. We know that it's not very clear, but it is clear here what we must do in terms of providing supports before we are to administer a no credit. So first of all, the teacher will contact the student and family to discuss needed support. Within that, contact meaning like not just having called and not heard back, but actually have a discussion with either the student and the family to talk about what's happening. That includes maybe a wellness check, just to have a better understanding of our student situations. Number two is that the teacher will collaborate with the student's academic counselor. So if I have called the family and I've discussed some of the supports that are needed, then the next thing I would need to do is to confer with the student's academic counselor. And if that student is a special education student and has any IEP or any sort of modified learning plans, then I would need to also consult with the special education caseload manager to intervene. Once I've done that, then I will need to collaborate with any available student supports the student received during the normal school operations. So anything that was in place during normal school I will have to collaborate and think about how to connect those to this student that I'm thinking about giving a no credit to. After that, then I will need to consult with the site administrator or their designee. Some site administrators have their vice principals working with teachers around these issues. So if I'm not able to do all of these steps, then perhaps I'm not sure if that student is facing a mitigating factor or not, and would really reconsider the issuing of the no credit because these interventions are required to be implemented. The second bullet there is describing that any student who receives no credit will be given an opportunity to improve their grade over the summer. So June through August. And what that would mean is that the teacher needs to come up with a plan and opportunity for students to improve their grade if they didn't turn something in, whatever the thing is, if you are issuing a no credit. And because these fabulous people on the phone, in this webinar with me, we're also on the bargaining team, and we are not doing a breakout today. I'm going to ask if any of you would like to chime in and say a few words, and Susan as well, who's a high school teacher but was not on the bargaining team, about this portion of the MOU. Joey, Susan, anybody? Okay.
I was waiting for some think time. I would just say to this part, as I've said to other high school teachers who've had questions about what it means in implementation, the spirit of what we were bargaining for here was to build strong protections for our students against being punished for no credit for things that are well beyond and out of their control, and for factors that we may not be aware of. So a lot of our students, as you all know, as high school teachers, as teachers in Oakland, are struggling with a whole host of things that are listed under the many mitigating factors there. And any opportunities that we can give to have less trauma or less concern or worry or anxiety brought to our kids is an opportunity, I think, where we can build in more healing at a time when many of us are dealing with this really scary pandemic for some people. So the spirit and the intent in the writing is really around like trying to protect students as much as possible and err on that side of caution when it comes to making the decision to really follow through with those steps to deliver no credit for a student.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Something that I would add is some feedback that I had heard was like, if a student wasn't participating very much during the rest of the school year, and now like, what does it mean to give the student credit at the end? And I would just like remind all teachers that students can engage differently at different times, and that students, in many ways, opportunities to engage and to make up credits during Q4 have been taken away due to lack of technology, lack of resources, family illness or personal illness. There are many, many factors that would be contributing. So try, like Joey said, to mitigate and to lessen the harm that we're producing for students, and to just be understanding of the circumstances that they're going through.
Thank you, Susan.
In terms of the makeup work, what I would like to say is that we also did this in the spirit of, given the fact that we might not get in communication with some students, right? And then you send out a report card and they're like, I was never contacted, I didn't know, maybe they didn't have, you know, a working telephone during this whole time, and nobody was able to contact them. And suddenly they get a report card where they're failing. And this is a student who would have been doing the work the whole time. So it's an opportunity for them to be able to make up any of the work that was missed during this time, and giving them that opportunity to just make it up.
Thank you, Patty. along those lines, so just thinking about the considerations which some of my colleagues raised here are just factors and realities for students that impact their current learning context. So really thinking about what do we really know about our students during this time? I don't know what happened to the rest of that sentence. But do we really think about the relationships we have or don't have with students, and they're at the age where they're growing and they're still coming into their own and not forthcoming with what's happening with them on a regular day. Now, couple that with COVID, and they may be really going through some scary things that they may not feel comfortable sharing. So just being mindful just to make sure we're not making assumptions about our students. And secondly, when we're grading, we're really grading their privilege. Their privilege to be present, their privilege to have internet, their privilege to have technology and even a space to work and complete work. So how does that factor in? And really kind of moving forward with the kindness of heart that Susan referred to earlier. And lastly, they're not receiving the same amount or type of support at home that they would receive if they were in school. A lot of folks, as we all know, are at home, and their parents or siblings are also at home, and they're having to take on responsibilities of watching their younger siblings and helping them with schoolwork. And as it goes, the elder kids tend to have to bear the brunt of that responsibility at the cost of perhaps their own learning. And so really taking these things into account as we consider moving forward. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to share? Kampala, maybe?
Hi, thanks. I can just share a personal experience. I think everybody covered all the other points. As a parent and a teacher trying to work during this period of time, and having my own child having to log on and try to do this distance learning, it is very challenging. And I do have my older son carrying a lot of the burden. So I just want to reiterate that this is challenging even for those of us that have some privilege. For some of our students that, have less, it can be even more challenging. So just wanted to also add that in. Thank you.
Thanks, Kampala. So, and through this work, kind of just wanted to address questions that you might be grappling with around grading. We had the idea to have discussion groups and breakout rooms, and for everyone to join with an open heart and mind to engage in supportive dialogue with colleagues. We are not going to be doing that today, but what we will do is avail ourselves. I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm not a high school teacher, but my colleagues are, and I feel like they are more qualified to answer the high school grading questions. So we are very open and would be happy to have discussions with those of you who have questions or just scenarios you want to talk through that nobody has really been able to help you with moving forward. As we close, since we're not breaking out, I'm going to skip on. What I would like is for any final words to share out with folks who may be watching the webinar.
I'll share one thing. So in my classroom, normally, I try and make my grading system as redemptive as possible. So to one of Susan's points earlier, it's really important to me that students have opportunities to improve, and that a grade is not permanent at any point until the school year ends. So I build those opportunities in regularly in my classroom already. And when we're in these circumstances right now, it's really hard for every student to have an equitable opportunity to have those redemptive chances to improve their mastery, improve their learning and their understanding. That's why I'm being very cautious and erring on the side of awarding credit to my kids. And the last thing that I will say is, for me, because this was titled the best practices of grading, one of the things that I found really helpful and useful is thinking about this as an opportunity for myself as a teacher to open up what it means to grade, especially in high school where it has a lot more meaning and a lot more power, but to take a note from our elementary colleagues of using grading as a chance to provide feedback to parents, to families, to students on your progress. And that has been really hard for a lot of kids because they now are having more conversations with me than they used to about what does this grade actually mean when I grade something. But it opens up the space to rely more on formative assessment and treating grading as such, where kids get feedback about the progress of their learning and not a GPA or a grade point average or whether they're failing or passing.
Patty?
I would also say that even though we tried lineating the steps that you need to take in order to give no credit, those steps are interpreted differently and how they look at your site might be very different. So I would say to have a conversation with your administration, right? A discussion more than anything, and providing them feedback of how you think this best can work at your site, and make sure that everybody is clear with the expectations of what your administrator is looking at, what the engagement looks like, and what the support they're providing you with it looks like, so that there's no discrepancies and misunderstandings throughout the process. And the closer we get to the end of the school year, the harder it may be to give a no credit if you're unclear as to what your administrator's expectations are. So get clarity and definitely push back if you think something is unfair, and ask for supports whenever you need them.
Susan?
I'm in communication with Baltimore City teachers a lot because I taught my first 6 years there. And it's fascinating to look at another district that serves many low-income students and is grading students during this time. We have, with letter grades, we have the opportunity right now to really, really protect our students. Our MOU works really hard to protect teachers and educators, and I hope that as educators, we can do that same work and offer that same like grace and flexibility with our awesome youth as well.
Thank you. Kampala, do you have any closing words?
The beauty of going last is that everybody already says all the wonderful things. But just to reiterate, you know, the MOU was written in the way it was really to protect our students and make sure that we're really thinking through all the factors and all of the things that our students are going through at this time, and to ensure that we're intentionally thinking about the privilege and the challenges in terms of access to internet and to the devices that are necessary for all of our kids to be able to get equal access to education. So just really wanting to make sure that folks are thinking that through as they are applying their grades.
Thank you, everybody. A closing thought I have is that while we definitely hold our students to very high standards, we are not lowering those standards. What we are recognizing is that we are not doing homeschooling right now. We're in a crisis. So it's crisis schooling. And with that, we need to move forward in every way that we connect with students and families, with that as a foundational understanding that we're all grappling with so much and taking that into account. And everyone else said everything very eloquently, and I'm super grateful for your time today. Thank you very much. And we are all done.
All right, thank you.
And I'll just close with this quote I forgot. Equality is leaving the door open for anyone who has the means to approach it. And equity is ensuring there's a pathway to the door for those who need it. and just really thinking about what that means. We talk a lot about equity here in Oakland and making sure that we really are looking through an equity lens when we work with our youth. So thank you, everyone.